Hi there, I'm Steve Rankin in the Office of the Chaplain here at SMU, and we're doing this series of conversations on justice and how people think about justice and how they seek to enact it and put it to practice in life. So today we have with us Erica Zamora, who is the Director of the Office of Social Change and Intercultural Engagement here at SMU, and I look forward very much to talking with Erica. So we'll start with our questions. The first question, how did you get interested in the topic of justice, and what direction does your advocacy for justice take?
Yeah, so my interest and awareness of the topic of justice and what it means to be a citizen of kind of this larger world community really came for me, where I started to comprehend that was through my undergraduate degree. So I went to St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, which is founded by the Congregation of Holy Cross. And part of our mission statement as a university, which is really ingrained in a lot that we do on campus, is stressing the obligation to pursue a more just world. And that is a line that has stuck with me since I was an undergrad, that there was this larger part of my education that I was going to become someone who had a degree, had a piece of paper, but also was going to be someone who could contribute to a better world for others, no matter what that looked like. There's also this other quote from Blessed Basil Moreau, who's one of the founders, one of the saints also from the Congregation of Holy Cross. He says it's important to educate the mind, but not at the expense of the heart. And so through my time at St. Edward's, I was obviously in coursework and studying communication, which was a lot of fun for me to study all of that. But I had this underlying theme that there was going to be something bigger than just what my job was after school, and so I ended up combining kind of my interest in bettering the community, so kind of the things that I was doing outside of the classroom through leadership and service and empowering other students, with my interest in this microcosm that had been created at St. Edward's and wanting to pursue then a higher education degree. And so I ended up at New York University working in community service programs in New York City, and so working with a lot of nonprofits, and kind of that's where it really started to grow. But it's all started really from that undergraduate degree, and just kind of that stress that they put on us, that when you leave here, you have a responsibility to leave the world a better place and pursue that.
Let me ask it this way: would you say that you have a call to this kind of work? Would that be a fair way of putting it?
Yes, I do think so. I think that sometimes it's hard to put into exact words, but I think that the way in which I have kind of found my own little niche in this world is through empowering and educating students to understand that same thing that I learned, because I do think that it didn't just make me a better student, but it made me a better person and a better friend and a better human and citizen of my community. And so I think that it is so powerful to empower students and others around us that they can be working in whatever industry they want to work in, they can be doing whatever they want to do, but that they can also have and pursue what it means to create a better society for us all through that also.
A better society, so maybe
Yes.
that's a good jumping off point for the question about justice.
Yes.
We're asking all of our people we're having conversation with, how do you define justice, and how would you explain that to people?
Yeah, so justice, for me, I think is along that pursuing and understanding how we can create society to be a better place for all people, right? So what can we be doing to be helping our neighbors, our friends, and those in our community that might be suffering from different injustices in terms of structural oppression, person-to-person aggression or microaggressions, things like that. How can we be working on ourselves and kind of the circles around us in order to continue to make sure that we are creating our own just communities, and hoping that is something that many people are pursuing, and that it's an endless and tireless pursuit, because there's always people and different structures that we're trying to work toward, but that justice for me really starts with our own communities, and looking inward to how we can be creating those spaces within our own control.
I remember listening to you present one time about the concept and the reality of intersectionality.
Yes.
So what does that word mean, and how does it connect to justice?
Yeah, so intersectionality, I think for me is intertwined with this concept of justice. When we talk about people and we assume things about them by either, it can be how they look, but it can also be what their job is, what they have chosen to pursue, what their majors might be. There's a lot of assumptions that are made about a person, and I think when we talk about what it means to take a truly intersectional approach to each other, it's understanding not only how that person identifies, but how those different identities kind of work with each other. So for myself, I identify as a multiracial woman. I am half Filipino. My dad's Filipino from the Philippines, and my mom's Irish Catholic from the Bronx. And so for me, the way that I go through the world sometimes, though, is assumed to be maybe Hispanic, because my last name is Zamora, and we live in Texas. And so for me, that's one part of just the racial intersectionality of my identity that comes to the surface a lot. But when you start talking about how important my Holy Cross education was to me, and that though I may not identify strongly with a church specifically in Dallas, that the Catholic faith and the way that I was educated is a really important part of why I choose to do the work that I do. And that it's not something you would just know about me, right? But it is something that helps someone understand where I'm coming from once we start to talk. And so for me, intersectionality also comes with actually trying to get to know people as people and understand where they're coming from, because I think that in the pursuit of justice, learning and listening are top priority when we seek to listen to understand someone and where they're coming from, and not just assume that we know what their needs are, what their experience is. And even if we have the best intention of trying to help that, if we're not actually listening to each other, then we're not creating something that is identified by the people who might actually benefit from it. So I think an intersectional approach is really important, to listen to each other and hear how where there's conflicts internally and externally about our different identities, and how we can talk through those together and learn from each other.
If we think of justice in a sense more locally in our neighborhoods, in our relationships, how do you correct the false impression, untangle this prejudice a little bit, without just feeling like you're sort of lecturing people all the time?
Yeah. I think that's a key thing I try to talk about with my students a lot, is that we talk about how everyone right now, they feel like they're always trying not to offend each other, and they are afraid to ask questions because they don't want it to come off in a certain way. And we talk a lot about the intent. It doesn't always matter, but you need to make sure that you are presenting it as kindly as possible, right? So if I don't know you and you walk up to the street and to me on the street and just say, "Hey, who are you? What are you? What are you?" I'm not going to take that well, because I have no idea who you are. I don't know why you're asking. I might be a little more mean because I have no idea what your intent is to use that information with. And so when I am talking to students and they're talking about having these conversations, it's really, for me, about, are we trying to build a relationship? Is this information that is going to help you understand me better? And going back to that intersectionality, right? So if I can explain to you and you are trying to get to know me, or you know that we're going to be working together and that's why you're asking, then absolutely I'm happy to have that conversation and talk about how Spain conquered the Philippines back in the day, and so that's how we think I got, my family ended up with this last name, and how that family history is important to me, and what it means for me to walk through the world. If you are genuinely curious about someone because you're trying to get to know them and you want to better understand where they're coming from and what their life experiences are, then I am not going to get offended by that. But if I don't know what you're using that information for, and you are just coming up to me on the street, or we haven't interacted before, then I think there's a difference in that. And I think that a lot of people would feel the same just about other personal questions as well.
Obviously, you're very active with advising students
Yes.
on these kinds of questions. So, I'm sitting in your class, and you've got one shot with me.
Yeah.
What is it that you want me to make sure I take away when it comes to not just the concept of justice, but actually doing my best to put it into practice?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with two things, and one of them is appealing to the side that when you get out into the world and you're at a workplace, you're not going to be able to pick and choose your teams in the way that you are in college, right? You're going to have to work with people who are different generations from you. They might be different backgrounds than you. They might have been raised in different faith institutions than you. And you're going to have to get a project done because your money depends on it, right? For a lot of our students, the reality is they're going to have to work with a lot of different people that are different than them. And the thing that we can practice here at SMU is starting to talk to people like they're people, right? Treating everyone as if they are someone that you have something to learn from, and you have something to bring to the table as well. And so that's kind of the first appeal I make to students. Like, you might as well start practicing it now, because when you leave here and you can already do this, and your employers see that you are willing to and can work with anyone no matter where they're coming from, you're going to be a better employee and a better person for it. And that the second half of it is that you have chosen to pursue an education. You have chosen to educate yourself on a specific topic. But particularly at SMU, you've also chosen to be part of this world changer shaped here kind of mantra that we've got. And in order to be a world changer, you've got to understand the world around you, and you've got to at least try to see where everyone else is coming from. And again, appealing to that, there's no better time to start than now, because college is a place where we are assuming learning of each other. We want to make mistakes, we want to learn, we want to grow, and that we're here for each other, and that we can make SMU a better community. We can already see all the great things that our students are doing out in the world, and that we can continue to make the world a better place by continuing to make SMU a better place as well.
Good. Well, thank you very
Of
much,
course.
Erica. Love the conversation, and
Absolutely.
and thank you for listening in.